on today's StoryBeat.
I was with Second City in Chicago, and improv teaches you, like community theater, to be an actor, director, and a producer all at the same time. You get a situation, you get a character, you get an emotion, go. That's up to you to put on the right costume, to come up with the right character, and it teaches you that.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, producer, director, and actor Adam Weinstock, is the co-owner of Red Spear LLC and president of Creative Concept Productions. He's also chairman of the board of Emerging Artists Theater. Creative Concept Productions has produced over 100 shows, ranging from the 1996 revival of Mart Crowley's landmark play, The Boys in the Band, to the critically acclaimed 21 Dog Years Doing Time at Amazon.com and Musical the Musical, which played off-Broadway for over 6 years. Adam was dubbed Mr. Entertainment by no less than the New York Times. He's produced in both the US and London's West End and been involved in numerous Broadway shows, including Deuce, starring Marion Seldes and Angela Lansbury, Peter and the Starcatcher, Meteor Shower, Be More Chill, Tina, Lifespan of a Fact, Sunset Boulevard, On Your Feet, Bandstand, Present Laughter, and the Tony-winning Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike. Adam has worked closely with President Clinton, John Shea, Jean Louisa Kelly, Bruce Vilanch, Leah Delaria, Judy Tenuta, Charles Bush, Margaret Cho, Ellen Green, Paula Poundstone, Sandra Bernhard, Michael Feinstein, and Linda Eder. For more, please be sure to visit creativeconceptproductions.com. So for all those exceptional reasons and many more, I'm truly honored to have the multi-talented Adam Weinstock as my guest on StoryBeat today. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you, and I'm so delighted you're with me. So let's go back to your roots. Where did all of this interest, passion, desire for the theater come from? When did that start for you?
Oh, gosh. You know, I've listened to some of your podcasts. I should have known this question.
Well, thank you.
I'm guessing in the second grade when I played the Cowardly Lion and the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, there you go.
In Miss Lynn's class, you know, that was it. And then just, you know, I guess if you start something in second grade, like whether you start learning an instrument or take ballet or archery or a sport, it just becomes part of your landscape. And I guess performing was, you know, I always liked telling a joke at family functions and making them laugh, and they would say, tell that joke. And I can remember, you know, it was, you know, dopey kid jokes, but, you know, I loved being the center of attention, as so many theater folk do, and, you know, getting a laugh. And, you know, I was never a singer like some of my friends who have this wonderful talent.
Right.
Have beautiful dulcet tones come out. That's never been me. Although I've been leads in musicals, but it's always like Nathan Detroit, like the funny, like Nathan Detroit doesn't really have to wow you with his voice.
It's not a, you don't have to sing power ballads.
I don't think so. I think it was Nathan Lane and Jamie Farr did it. These are not, you know, your singers.
So the hooks got set around the age of 6 or 7 or 8, somewhere in there. And once that was set, that was it. It was in your blood.
Yeah. A lot of kids know who they want to be when they're kids. And I always loved animals. So I thought either like a veterinary or, you know, a performer. And, you know, I haven't become a vet yet, but I do love my animals.
Well, okay. So who did you then look up to? Who were your influences? Who did you think were, wow, I'd like to be like that person?
Oh, gosh. Well, you know, my mom was a performer, you know, so she was always like an influence like that. And then if you're looking at theater people that inspired me, wow, you know, I just get the greats that, you know, watching people turn, you know, I wanted to be Adam West. I wanted to be Batman. When I was, you know, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to pow, bam, zap, and have a sidekick and just, that's what I wanted to be. That was one of the most inspiring. And then I wanted to be on the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family. I wanted to hang out with them. I used to dream that, that I was a member of the Partridge Family or the Brady Bunch, like their guest child or something like that. And I don't know if many people can relate to that, but that's what I thought.
I think many people can relate to that. People who want to be in the business found something that they found that was really inspiring in some way.
And I'm glad that there were the TV images for me to relate to. In this age on Broadway, we're finding a lot of people couldn't find people that they could relate to as a child. So they were there for me. So, they were people I idolized. And I guess that's what did it,
Did you go off and do a lot more acting? Was that where the bug bit you? Was that an actor?
So then, the community theater started.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun at the library, at the temple, at, pretty much wherever I could. And then when I got to high school, I don't know, they had let the fall play, they let the play fall by the wayside. And there really wasn't high school productions anymore in the high school I went to. I don't remember if there was musicals still, but there wasn't a play. So another student and myself petitioned the administration, and we directed, Arsenic and Old Lace and The Man Who Came to Dinner. And we restarted the tradition in our high school. It's going on now. It just sort of, people cut budgets, and I don't know what happened. And, I was in high school in the 80s.
So you were producing back then. You just didn't know it.
I suppose. Gosh, I haven't thought of that in a while. Yes, I guess. It was, I guess back in high school, producer and director, it's all the same things. You're finding the props, you're picking the images, you're making the posters, you're choosing the,
Well, that was the biggest shock about professional theater, film, TV for me, because I'd done a lot of that as well, community theater. And the biggest shock was, wait a minute, you can't pick that up. That's somebody else's job. Because in the community theater, you do it all.
Yeah, that's the difference.
And you learn all the different disciplines by doing all those things.
It's a good way to learn. I hear if you work at McDonald's and you become a manager, you have worked the fry machine, you've worked the register, you've cleaned the dining room, you've done it all before you can become a manager there. So that's really, I think a lot of producers might have been actors that were treading the boards at one point. And there's a lot of creativity to producing that people on stage don't always get. There's show and business.
Right, sure.
Not everybody thinks both ways. And I've seen people incredibly limited in their careers who don't. One of my friends just became an artistic director. That's not really a producer, and he's a wonderful artistic director.
Right.
When he was just producing, dealing with the finances and the money and the budget, he lost his light. He can give an actor direction, help somebody turn a phrase, help somebody believe in themselves, find a moment on stage. He's wonderful at that. When he simply had to produce, worry about ticket sales and numbers and budgets, that wasn't for him. This new position of artistic director, he's doing wonderfully in.
Well, so the difference is administrative work, which can be creative, but the difference between that and being truly creative or artistically creative.
Correct.
And so, all right, let's talk about producing. Explain for the listeners what Red Spear is and does, and what Creative Concept Productions is and does, and what are the differences between the two, if there are any differences?
That's a question. Okay. So how do I start? Creative Concept Productions was owned by a friend of mine named Rob Levy, who left us in the late 90s. And he lived down in Florida. He was a producer. And I never understood what he did. I didn't get it. When I was approached about producing, or when I got the producing bug, I needed a company. Rob had left us, but his company, Creative Concept Productions, was around. So I just sort of took it for like $1 and grabbed his already existing LLC. And, it was something that didn't need to happen. I've lived with the title for years, but he had done work. He had worked with Chuck Mangione, and he had worked with President Clinton. So I thought his company had some cachet, and it wasn't just me starting out. What Creative Concepts Productions does is allows me to unilaterally and solo produce anything I want to produce. Right? Red Spear I have a business partner
Ah,
to discuss things. And Red Spear, Creative Concepts, there's a lot of one-offs, and I have been incredibly lucky to have worked with some single talent, like Margaret Cho has been a loyal talent that always allows me to produce her in a couple of venues in Provincetown, in Fire Island, and occasionally elsewhere. Margaret will join a project for me. I just texted her yesterday for National Doggy Day because I love her dog and she's a dog lover. And, and she responded. My nephew was here. He's like, "You just gonna text Margaret Cho right now?" I go, "I am." And she liked it. She hearted me and blah 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 blah. Paula Poundstone, Linda Eder. These are people who I produced solo, and I don't need the brilliant Roger Cooper, who's my business partner in Red Spear. I have a couple of things I want to do next summer, 2022. I'm big with the
so Creative Concept, if I understand this correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is more like you would do one-off concerts or maybe a small tour or something like that. But Red Spear sounds like that's involved in much bigger, much more complex productions, like Broadway productions.
I think I can go with that definition. I do think that one of the things I'm going to do with Creative Concepts this coming summer of 2022 might be a fairly large tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see the need in having to run things by Roger. Though Roger's brilliant, I would say that the way you just defined it is completely acceptable for me. I just
so it sounds like Red Spear is more of a, how do I say it, more of a corporate entity, and Creative Concept is a little more personal.
Okay, yeah, I'll go for that.
That's what it feels like.
There might be some things I would produce on Creative Concepts that I would never run by Roger because
There's something that's you're passionate about that it might not be right for the corporation.
Correct.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so we talked about creative producing here a moment ago, and I want to explore that for just a moment. Many people, I think, that don't understand the industry don't think of producers as being the creative people. They think of producers as being nuts and bolts, as raising money and hiring people and doing those administrative jobs we talked about. You think of yourself, I assume, as being involved in the creative end of things, yes?
Creative Concept Productions, yes, I guess so. Because you have to be so creative to sell things these days, to get the word out, to find the right image, to cast the right people.
Mm-hmm.
We just had a casting coup. I'll probably disclose it later, but we just had this incredibly brilliant star sign on to our project, and it's gonna be everything. And the fact that we got him is everything. And it's brilliant. It's creative. We put our heads together. We formed a think tank. Who should we ask? And also the right image and the right time. It's not time for this particular show I'm working on to go to Broadway. It's just not, because being in the pandemic and giving the stage to voices that haven't been heard before, it's probably not time for like this brilliant piece I'm working on that has 4 white leads. Probably not right now.
Do you get involved from the ground up on some projects? There's a script or maybe even an idea before there's a script, and you help to develop, yes?
Correct. In this particular project, I was speaking to one producer about a general manager who will take care of all the little things, getting all the ingredients, the general manager sending, things that I don't need to do, but things that need to get done. And he was like, "How'd you get involved in this project?" And I was taken aback. I was like, "What do you mean? They're lucky to have me." And I'm like, "I've been with this project for years. I trust the writer, and it's going to be terrific. And the residuals from this project is going to be where a producer might cash in, because producers, you think money with producer.
Sure.
I always think of the productions. Producer has to think of so many things. Are we doing it online? Are we doing it with more than one camera? Are we doing it for a live audience? These days, things that you never even thought of before as a producer.
Sure, because we're talking still in the time of COVID. So
we're talking in the time of COVID and now the Delta variant. So what are we doing at the theater to make people feel safe? Are we selling every other seat? Are we advertising saying that we have a new ventilating system? I mean, these are the things that nobody on stage involved in the show would worry about. They just
Of
want
course,
to know.
and nor should they. That's not
Correct. I want them to do a good job at their part. I want them to sing. I want them to relax. I want them to tell their jokes. I want to have Paula Poundstone comfortable for walking on stage and knowing that it's a comfortable area. And we don't know what our stars, and just dealing with my family. I have some people who are COVID, like they're over it, like they don't care. They'll go to a restaurant, they'll eat inside. And I have some relatives who are still in COVID panic, and they won't come over.
so what are you doing right now to keep your heart and soul in the game when it's so limited by this disease?
That's a brilliant question. I feel like I'm in the game again. The first thing I did was I retired from teaching in public education. As of July 1st, recently, I mean, just a few weeks ago, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but I retired from public education because I did that too, to support my habit. It sounds like a drug. Support my theater habit. I was dancing with a net, and people would say, "Don't you want to produce full time?" I'm like, "Ooh, well, sure. I'd love to do that, but worst comes to worse, I'm going to give me a spelling test in September and have my weekly salary and not worry about a lot of things that people in our community have had to worry about recently.
Right.
I had in, and now I have a pension, and it's brilliant." And then on July 1st, my first official day of retirement, I was offered one of my most prestigious positions in the theater community, executive director of a theater festival. And I'm like, wow. Okay, all right, and it's a theater festival, so it's not a lot of money, but it's a great title, and I'm going to do it.
How do you think COVID is going to change Broadway and the main STEM theater in the country and perhaps the world for the foreseeable future? Clearly, it's shut everything down solid for quite some time. As it gears back up, what changes do you think that you see coming that will become more permanent, or at least permanent for the foreseeable future?
Well, I'm going to a show this weekend at the John Engelman Theater in Northport. It's a one-woman show by Candice Gardino, and I'm sure I'm going to have to sit there in my mask.
Right.
So I'm guessing audience members will have to wear masks. I'm going to fly to London, and I guess I'm going to have to wear my mask on the plane for 7 hours. So
for sure,
I'm not going to complain if I get to see, a Laurence Olivier award-winning musical and have to sit for 2 hours and wear a mask. We're going to have to adapt. So
the physical look of the audience is different right there.
That's tricky, isn't it? Because even as a teacher, when I was teaching and people were on the screen and I would crack a joke, I couldn't tell if my students were smiling or yawning or laughing. And it's very tricky. I just tried to zoom into the Edinburgh Festival, and it was a recorded performance. It wasn't live. So I wasn't hearing any laughter. It's so hard to watch a comedian without
an audience. Yeah, you got to have an audience. It was a good example. That was Bill Maher on Real Time. For months, he was doing it out of his home, and there was no audience. And to me, the jokes didn't work very well. And then once he had an audience again, you could see that everything worked again.
There's that energy that right. So I think we're going to have to be in masks. I know that when I'm executive director of this theater festival, we will not be taking people's temperature as you walk in. I don't want to do that. I also don't like the nonsense. I think it's nonsense of not handing people a program or a playbill. And I don't know what's happening with that. It's constantly download our play, where you take your phone and you look at the QR code.
Right.
Before we started interviewing, I commented on your beautiful room with all your paraphernalia behind you. Now, I didn't buy a poster for all of my shows, so I'm going to put the playbills behind me.
Right.
There's no more playbills. How am I going to decorate? I like holding something in my hand. And it's available, a program, at least like they sell you in London. And I was told that it's a COVID violation. We can't hand you a piece of paper. I'm like, that's a bunch of bunk.
Well, it's kind of like albums. Albums went to CDs, and CDs have now gone away, and there's nothing to hold on to anymore. It used to be you could read liner notes, and they were nice, big, beautiful packages, and now that's all gone.
as a former manager of a radio station, I must tell you that the kids are very interested in vinyl. And there's a new thing called Victoria or Victrola, and everybody's buying these new $49.99. It looks like a close and play Victrolas, and people are liking the records now. People want to hold things in their hand. I've been buying books lately instead of screens. I do think that we will constantly be changing to adapt to this new normal. And I don't know if everybody or anyone knows what it is. My trainer came over, we work out in my house. We both don't wear masks. He's been doing this for 2 months. We're both vaccinated. So we need to find our way to do it. Last year, I went to the production of Godspell up in the Berkshires, and everybody was behind the screen. And we were so far away. We were over 12 feet from other people in the audience outside. And I cried at every number. And it was hokey. I mean, it was Godspell. And every song brought a tear to my eye, just people performing and singing. And they would step out from behind this like plastic L, remove their mask, sing the number, and then put their mask back on. And I was like, ooh, this is tricky, but it's wonderful. People are singing. And with a group of people, we're all feeling emotions. At my shows that I produce, I want to be able to hand people programs, and I want to be able to keep them safe. I think if you own a theater, you will invest in the new air filtration systems.
Right.
You're going to have to do that. And, you go to, like, I was on the subway last week for the first time in a year and a half. It was cleaner than ever. And it was stifling to wear the mask before the train came because it was so hot down there.
Hot down there.
When the air-conditioned car came in, it was no big deal.
I think part of what's going to happen from just one other perspective is it's like anything else. Each generation has its own things that they get used to. So I do think that we're going to see a generation here with less physical books in their hands because they grow up using Kindles. Yes. And that sort of thing. So when the audience gets used to one thing, then and that's all they know because that's how they're introduced.
We're going to have to get used to it. We're going to have to get used to it to move forward. I think I started mentioning like my dog because I wanted to because I got him an agent. There's something commercial about this particular pet I happen to have.
Right.
Everybody's dog and cat are beautiful. There's something very commercial about Baxter, and I got him an agent, and the agent keeps saying, well, as soon as COVID is over. And I'm like, when's that going to be? COVID's never going to be over. AIDS is never going to be, like, cancer, it's not going to be over. I need to find him a new agent because she's not adapting to what we have to do.
And I must tell you, on a weird sidebar, my first dog ever was named Baxter.
Oh.
So there you go.
Sorry, man, but it's not for this particular podcast. That's brilliant. And there are people who are being fired for not being vaccinated. And
well, it's really a question of how can we, I guess, stop this thing from becoming a threat. And then once we get past it being a threat, then it gets a little easier. People still get sick every year from the flu and from colds and other things. So we have to learn to figure out how to live with it. I think that's right. All right. So I want to go back to being a producer again, which is what you principally are about. What is it that attracts you to a story? What for you makes a good story good? What do you look for?
All right, I want to talk to you about the soap myth. You heard it here first, the soap myth.
Okay.
The soap myth is a play by a gentleman named Jeff Cohen. And this one is pulling on me right now. This is just working for me in a big way. And it's basically about the Holocaust. And right now I'm seeing so much more involved in it. I'd really like to bring it to London in 2022, New York in 2023. We're probably going to do a reading in New York in September. And right now it's the end of August, like in a couple of weeks. The thing about it this gentleman did all this research. So there's all these facts involved. And then there's people who are denying the facts. It toured as a reading with Ed Asner for like 2 years. And he killed it.
Wow.
And Tova Felcham was in it. And is in it still. She plays the leader of the Holocaust Center, who won't accept the fact that maybe Jews were made into soap because they can't prove it. And then she plays a Holocaust denier. Now, Ed Asner is brilliant, but what I've been showing people is Tova's few minutes where she plays the denier, who's really sweet and you like her, and how she twists the role. She goes, if you want to believe in a hoax, if you want to perpetuate a myth and the resonance of the anti-vaxxers and the people who refuse to believe the science or the facts that people are telling you and just choosing, it's so apparent. So it's resonating with me. And she's wonderful in it. You asked me about who inspires me. And Tova's so good in this, and it's so bizarre to see her after playing, so many famous Jewish women, a Holocaust denier. She turns a phrase, and she's brilliant in it, and it's chilling, and it's just chilling.
So
And,
is it that it has to hit you viscerally in your gut? Is that what it is?
it just has to get you. Well, as a producer, you choose a lot of things. You have to see what resonates with you. Because I had people over COVID say, "Oh, please read this script. This is going to be the next thing on Broadway. It's going to be the next Hamilton." They all say the next this, and I'm like, I'm not interested. And then they passively aggressive come at you again. I had to tell a friend of mine not to send me her play because I think it was in January, 6 months ago. I didn't want to hear it. I wasn't interested. We were coming out of the first COVID summer. We were going back to school, and it was everything I could do to just put a smile on and have some energy for the children, for the kids in high school, and teach my lessons. She wanted to send me a script. I said, don't. She goes, what do you mean? Don't you and Roger at Red Spear, don't you always interested? I go, I'm on hiatus. And she goes, but I'm like, if you send me the script, in 2 weeks, you're going to ask me what I thought, and I won't have read it. And 2 weeks from then, it will now be a month. You're going to get angry at me for not having. So please don't send it yet. Soon, I promise you, I'll be inspired by theater. I needed to take a break, and I didn't even want something to inspire me. And now, with the Soap Myth and a couple of shows that I have opening, I'm back. I'm ready to be inspired. I'm ready to have something called to me.
And when you look for things, you're looking for things that hit you. They're not, they have to hit you. I assume it's not, you're not looking at it. I guess my point is you're not looking at work because it purely looks like a money play. It has to have some kind of emotional component to it, I assume.
And just like love, it comes when you're not looking. It comes when you're looking. Like you go to the Edinburgh Festival or some festival, and see 20 shows and can't remember any. And one of them are like, I got to produce this. That's happened to me with a couple of plays. One was called Haram Iran. I saw it in London at a small theater called Above the Stag, and it was about these two kids that were killed because maybe they were gay, and it was brilliant. It started out as a love story and it ended in the Crucible, and it was so good, and we did it. Somebody just approached me about it again, and I'm like, this was 3-4 years ago. I'm like, I think I've moved on to something else now. And then there was something, there's this brilliant comedian called Randy, and I can only call him Randy, and he was a purple puppet from Australia. And Randy writes a novel I brought to Off-Broadway, and he wouldn't meet me. He wouldn't meet me after Edinburgh. Like the person who plays the puppet, and you're not supposed to mention his name. He doesn't. He wasn't in the program. He wasn't in the playbill. It's just Randy. So you don't know the puppeteer's name, and that's like the rule. Like nobody knows who plays Randy. I mean, I know, but nobody. He was in my apartment. But he wouldn't meet me after Edinburgh. Like, yeah, he doesn't meet people. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a New York producer. This is why people come to Edinburgh to meet. To come to their show. And I begged him to come to Off-Broadway, and it took him 2 years, but he did.
So, all right. So how did you go from figuring out that you wanted to revive musicals in high school to becoming an actual producer? What training did you go through, or where did you learn it? How did you get there?
I wanted to be an actor. And that was just, I was with Second City in Chicago. And improv teaches you, like community theater, to be an actor, director, and a producer all at the same time. You get a situation, you get a character, you get an emotion, go. That's up to you to put on the right costume, to come up with the right character, and it teaches you that. Now, I was with Second City in the 80s, and that was like the breeding ground for everybody at Saturday Night Live, like Tim Kazurinsky, Belushi, like they all came from Second City. Steve Carell was in my class. Like we had,
Wow.
and he hasn't made it like I have, but he's doing all right. You know, and it just teaches you to think as a producer, actor, and director. So you have that mindset, you have that ability. They give you homework, take something that's not a musical and make it a musical. So we put like Streetcar Named Desire to the music of Fiddler on the Roof. And like I remember it now, like I told you, I can't sing, but it was like Anna Tefka, on a streetcar named Desire. And then we sang If I Were That Mitch Man. It was so silly. It was a Second City homework that's very Saturday Night Live. And you know, you got together with your other people in the class and you put it on. Then we formed a comedy improv group called the Illegitimate Players. And I was with them for a while. And we were 6 people. And we were producing, and one person set herself up as the producer. And you know, you learn. I think you did an interview with Jamie DeRoy, and she's like, you start here and you start at a level outside of New York, and you learn things and you move on from there.
What did you learn early on that influenced you and you're still using was a lesson back then, but now it's something that you employ all the time? Was it how you look at things? Was it how you talk to people? Was it how you raise money? What did you learn early on that you're still using that was like a valuable lesson back then?
I think that you can do it. You know, if you have, you know, there are some people who believe in themselves and you're like, oh my, no, no, no. Like, you know, I know someone who still wants to be a comedian, and you know, she's getting up there and she's like, I can dream, can I? And I'm like, I've gone to her shows and I have never been particularly impressed, but that's fine. It's not for me to kill her dreams. You know, if you know, you set a goal and then you make stuff happen. Am I allowed to curse?
Sure, go for it.
Like there's this recent meme that I just sent to the writer of the Soap Myth. It's like, you know, you think of something and make shit happen. You know, so you know we've gotten this brilliant actor, and today I just sent an email to his agent at APA, and you know, he's like, make an offer, and the offer's going out. You know, we're just moving and shaking. We're just going for it. You know, and you know, you don't procrastinate. You do it. Again, way back in January when I was on hiatus, I knew that wasn't the time for me to do. Now that I'm retired and you know, a lad of leisure, and you know, I'm just going to take the dog for a walk later, and you know, think of what I'm going to have for dinner. I will send the emails in a timely fashion and see if I can make this happen. You do it and do it well. I'm going to check the email 3 times for, you know, spelling mistakes. I'm not going to send something to Richard Dreyfuss's agent that has mistakes in it, the wrong date. You know, I'm not going to do that. So, and I don't have an assistant right now.
Did that bite you on the butt at some point early on where you did make mistakes and somebody rejected you and you knew it was because of those mistakes?
I don't want to look like an idiot. I want to.
But the point is, it doesn't make you look like an idiot. It makes you look like you learned from it.
That I have learned. I guess it did. I guess, you know, I had a Zoom meeting set up with a group, and somebody forgot about it. And I'm like, you know, it doesn't look good. And they're like, what? People make mistakes. I'm like,
well, so I, you know, I've taught here in Pittsburgh for 10 years, and I get after my students all the time because they're lazy about spell checking and proofreading and that kind of thing. And it's incredibly important. When you get a script from somebody, if the first 3 pages are filled with spelling errors and grammatical errors, it probably makes you question whether there's someone worth working with. Am I correct?
probably
It's called being a professional. Yes.
showing up to the best of your ability.
All right. So what percentage of your time do you think is left to acquiring material, and what percentage of your time, and now I'm talking about when we're actually in full production, not right now when we're in COVID, but during production time, what percentage of your time is spent dealing with the actual production itself? So one is pre-production, where you're acquiring material and developing material, and what percentage of your time is usually dealt or left to actual production?
Well, I guess it depends on the show, but you know, when it comes to finding a show, the people that pester you to read their thing and how wonderful their thing's going to be for you,
Right.
that almost never works. If somebody comes to you, for an investment, and they're bringing, Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman back to Broadway and somebody in, love letters or something, you're like, oh, okay, sure. That's actually a good idea. Because it's a bit, and to answer the other half of that question, that would be a very easy production because they basically read the love letters. You don't have a lot of sex. You're not going to have wigs. You're not going to have makeup. You're not going to have costumes. When I found Randy in Edinburgh, I was not looking. And our budget was so small for off-Broadway because he's a puppet. So there were no understudies, there were no costumes, there were no wigs, there were no makeups. It was a single guy. He never missed a performance. If he had, we didn't have an understudy. So we had a budget that was so affordable for off-Broadway, and he's real big in Australia. He has his own TV show. I mean, I thought I would get him on the Jimmy Kimmel show, and that would have helped sell tickets.
Sure.
Yeah, but that, I guess their whole booking process for comedians is real high. He did write a letter to help Randy get his visa. So, finding something. All right, The Soap Myth by Jeff Cohen, the one that I'm real excited about.
Right.
That was around in 2012, and it was dead in the water after they did it. They did a bare bones production, and then suddenly they got Ed Asner to read it, and Ed decided to tour with it. And Ed was brilliant and is brilliant in it. I mean, God bless him, he's 92 now. I don't think he could do a Broadway run, but he just and suddenly it was back in 2018, 2019, and 2020, and it toured. The Holocaust Center, and it went to Minneapolis, and it went to Florida, and here it was again. But it worked as a reading, and they put up their music stands, and again, like that wasn't a lot of production values. Now, if you're going to have a big musical, you want to have beautiful production values.
Do you have a preference? If I said to you, you were going to be destined to only do one genre or discipline, so you could either do musicals, plays that were straight plays, dramas, or comedies, would you say this is my favorite, I love doing this, or are you unable to make that kind of a choice?
I think I can. I think I like
Plays, dramas.
I think I like plays that just affect you. And you can have a comedy that has serious overtones. Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike was brilliant. You just sat there and you marveled at the acting and you marveled at the writing. Slave Play, I thought was brilliant. You marveled at the acting and you marveled at the writing. The Inheritance was, a 3-hour play and you wanted more. August Osage County, like I'm rattling off plays the way most ordinary theater folk would rattle off musicals.
Right.
Those are plays. I like to have a little bit of humor, and I like them to be something that stays with me and teaches me something, helps me think differently than I thought coming in.
All right. So what does emerging artist theater do? What is that?
Ooh, emerging artists, which is where I met the brilliant Roger Cooper, who was my partner on Red Spear. Emerging artists give a platform to creators in New York without charging the artist. In other words, if you wrote a play, Steve, or anyone, or my friend who wanted to give me her play, she could submit it to any of the 2 New Work festivals, put it on the stage in front of an audience as a reading, or, a staged reading, or even a production, and not be charged for it, and then split the door, rents the space, and gives you rehearsal space. Now, for somebody working in New York, that's brilliant. I've seen people break down in tears after we gave them a check for half of the door afterwards.
Wow.
The festival that I'm probably going to be at the helm of very soon doesn't charge the artists, pays for their flights and their housing, but the artists don't get anything. They don't get the door. And that's still pretty good, because something like the New York Fringe Festival, which doesn't exist anymore, and the New York Musical Festival, which, like, to do a show in the Fringe, it would cost you $10,000. You have to pay their stage managers. You have to pay so much. It costs you so much money to do it, and you're never going to see the money back. And, fringe festivals, like, if you go to Edinburgh or Adelaide, you don't go there in the hopes of making money. You go there in the hopes that somebody sees it and wants to bring it to
Sure,
London.
of course.
Right. Which,
And so I'm going to assume that means that emerging artist theater, or as the acronym is EAT.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that you have found a way to raise money to make that happen.
we ask for donations. We keep half of the door. There's a board, and the board has a board giving. We've all drank the EAT Kool-Aid. We believe in what we do. We apply for grants. EAT is very good at getting grants.
Right.
And people will give us grants because we give people of color, people of that don't have means, the chance to put their work on a New York stage and have it heard. And if it's real good, then maybe we'll run it. Like, we can't do the New Works Festival the way we used to, which was like 65 shows over 3 weeks, something like that. At a great little theater called Tada on 28th and 5th.
Right.
19 house. And you're in the theater. It's a great little space. It's a great little space. You can get feedback. There's usually a talk back. Occasionally, one of the shows we will produce as a showcase. There's a Doris Day Show now, which is real good. They just did a presentation at the Players Club last night, I think. And it's real good. It's real good with simple production values. There's a Doris Day, and there's the gentleman playing all the men in her life, from her husbands to her agents to who was that actor that she was in so many movies who died of AIDS?
Rock Hudson.
Rock Hudson. And I could see it having 6 pictures, like by the wings of her, and then all video projection. And I think people would go to it. And look how affordable that is for a struggling theater, and theaters are struggling, to put a Doris Day Show on for 90 minutes where the actress sings and just talks about her life. I mean, that's a good one.
How important, when you're looking at new works, my guess is it's really important, is that it looks as good as it is, and as much as it hits you, it still has to be in some way financially affordable. Is that a key?
For the New York Festival, for EAT, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
No, I'm talking about beyond it, where you see something, you go, we want to produce that, and it suddenly has there are 25 characters in it, and it really requires 25 actors. You're probably going to think twice about it, right?
I think I mentioned The Inheritance was one of the plays that I loved and saw more than once. You see August Osage County more than once. It's not going to be as good the 4th time, because all the twists and turns. That this person is going to have this argument with that person, and who's going to win. If you have 25 people, that's a tough one. Now, the soap myth, again, it's 4 people. And the reason I bring it up is the soap myth will be a moneymaker, because every theater, when theater comes back, when we figure it out, will do it. The way they did Doubt, that 3-person show, anyone that did The Diary of Anne Frank will be interested in the soap myth. The 4 characters are wonderful. All 4 are wonderful. Like, it's so affordable. And it will be done by regional theaters. Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike was tricky. It's, 2 acts with costumes and certainly more characters. And that was done a lot. Peter and the Starcatcher was done a lot in different venues. So EAT exists not for us to find something to produce, to allow people to be on the stage. And that's what makes EAT so special, emerging art.
Well, that's very
give them a chance to be on the stage, and that might be the only time it ever gets seen. And it's usually friends and family who come, and we try to get the artists to give us a body in a seat for every minute. So if you have a 90-minute show, we'd like you to try to have 90 people in the audience. If you have a half hour, a 30-minute show, we'd like you to try to get 30 people in there. But if you don't, that's our problem. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's incredibly powerful what you're doing. I mean, that's an opportunity for people that they otherwise don't get.
There's that. And then there's, hopefully, Roger and I at Red Spear, we got the chance to invest our money in Back to the Future, the musical. Have you heard about that?
I have not heard about that.
You have not heard about that?
No, tell me about it.
Okay, so this is a Steve Cuden exclusive. Back to the Future, the musical, is opening in London in September. We opened it in Manchester in February of 2020. So it played for a month. Went Back to the Future, and I laughed. I was like, no, I don't think so. The fact that I even got the chance to invest in it is a miracle. It got 24 brilliant reviews. This will be the musical theater's soul food that will get people back to the theater. There's a DeLorean on stage. Richard Bart is playing Doc Brown. And it's fantastic. And it's old songs from the movie, like the Huey Lewis songs,
Right.
but it's not a jukebox musical. The new songs written for the play, for the musical, and it's all the movie money. Like it's, Zemeckis and all the people that were involved in the movie. So the fact that, a high school teacher from Long Island, I drag that up all the time and I want to belittle myself, got the chance to invest. I will get the chance to invest when it comes to New York, which it will. And I will get the chance to invest when it goes on the road, which it will. So if you got to invest in Hamilton way back when,
Oh boy.
get to invest in it again and again. So who wouldn't,
Well, yeah, if you're an investor in Hamilton, you're probably sitting pretty.
Right. You invest again in the LA version, you invest again in the tour, and you invest again in the London. Like you just keep investing in it.
All right. So what are the biggest challenges that you find, or the most challenging things that you find in developing new material? What is a sort of a regular kind of thing that keeps coming up? Oh, this is always, I have to do this every single time we go out. We've got an issue with this.
I guess being kind to the other people on your team.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's a tough one. Like I said, someone didn't make a Zoom meeting the other day, and I was like, "Doesn't look good." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "It doesn't look good." And he had an actual problem. But I'm like, if you're on the team, you select this. And then somebody needed to change the time of the meeting, and I'm like, I'm a busy man too, and here's when the meeting is, and I don't want, So we have to be all for one and one for all, moving ahead. And as the team gets bigger and bigger, as you get closer and closer to Broadway, and you get more and more investors and more people involved, they feel that they have their right to put their 2 cents in. I actually gave Margaret Cho like a note, and she was like, she's not going to change her show. Linda Edder's not going to do a song that I want her to do in her show. If I produce Linda's show in Provincetown or anywhere, she's going to decide on her show, and it's going to be her set. And how cute of you to suggest that she's saying something,
Well, of course, my assumption is that the one person show, whatever that is, whether it's a comedian or a singer or cabaret or whatever it is you're doing, that people are coming to the event that night to see this one act. They're not coming to see they're not coming to see a scripted show. They're coming to be entertained in some way by usually comedy or singing or something like that. My assumption is that is that act's thing. You're not trying to change that, but you could.
But this is to keep everybody happy,
But when you've got a scripted show, when you have a script, that's a kind of a different thing. That goes through a development process in which changes are made.
Correct, and that's what and the Doris Day Show has gone through changes.
Mm-hmm.
The other person was never on the stage before. Now the other person is. Now there is a piano player, and she sings live instead of just recorded music of Doris singing Que Sera. Now the actress sings.
What are the what?
I didn't go to the reading the other night.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I didn't go. I didn't go to the reading the other night, and apparently the whole audience sang with her in Que Sera. I'm like, oh, okay, this is okay. Does the world need a Doris Day Show? I don't know, but if it's working, it is.
Well, I think right now the world definitely needs more puff things than hard things. We have enough hard things in our own life.
Right.
And so a little bit of relaxation and letting it out is a fine thing.
Which is why Back to the Future, the musical, will probably be a hit, and why we can wait on the soap myth, which is about the myth whether Jews were made into bars of soap in the Holocaust. We can wait on that.
Well, I definitely want to see that DeLorean take off on stage. I think that'll be really cool to see.
It takes off, but I can't wait. I'm definitely going to go and even just planning my trip to London is taking so much more effort than ordinarily.
Well, that is the times we're in. That will eventually, I believe, change. But right now, those are the times we're in. What would you say are the big differences between producing a play, a stage play with a script and a cast that's cast in character parts, and then versus producing a Linda Eder show or a Michael Feinstein show or something like that? What are the big differences? Are there?
I think the one-offs are easier, and especially if you have a relationship and you've done them before. I know everything Linda's going to want. I don't even have to worry about our manager. And I know as soon as I make an offer, they're gonna choose to go with me because they trust me because of reputation. Paula Poundstone will work with me in a minute. Here's the thing. Okay, so I'm gonna get a writer, and it might be, and I don't even know which agency Paul is with anymore, APA or somebody, William Morris, and I'm gonna get a writer that says that she has to have this food and this kind of thing, right?
Right.
And I'll sign it. All right. And I don't care how this sounds, whoever hears it right now. And I'm not going to do any of it. I'm not going to do any of it because Paula doesn't want any of that. Like the first time I worked with her, I said, look, and she goes, what's that? I go, that's the stuff you asked for. She goes, I didn't ask for any of that. And it was like chicken and Caesar salad. She wants a bag of Raisinets and a box of Pop-Tarts. That's what she wants. And if I meet her at the airport with that, she'll be like elated. And she'll just say, I got to get a lobster roll. And I'm like, oh, great. We'll go get a lobster roll. So I went to go get her the first time a lobster roll, and I went into the lobster roll place right next to where I was housing her. And I go, can I get a lobster roll for Paula Poundstone? And I said that because they had my poster on the wall. And in Provincetown, you either have no posters or everyone's poster.
Right.
It's like, right. But they only had mine. And the guy behind the desk was this big giant queen with a big handlebar mustache. He goes, what, does she want another one? I go, what are you talking about? He goes, she was in here half an hour ago. She bought it herself. I go, she bought her own. If I'm bringing the talent, you don't buy your. I go, doll. You bought your own lobster roll? Why'd you do that? And Paula goes, I was hungry. I go, I was so nervous the first time producing her. And I go, oh, we're going to get to the show at 7:00. She goes, well, what time's the show? I go, what time's the show? 8:00. She goes, I'll get there at 5 to 8. I go, 5 to 8? I go, I can't. You have to be, what, mic check. She goes, if the mic doesn't work when I'm on stage, I'll go like this. Turn the mic on. And that's when I stopped worrying about, pleasing the talent. And, because I work with some tricky people that want, like Tylenol instead of Advil and Poland spring water instead of Dasani, and people will be very particular or.
Well, famously rock and roll bands that want M&Ms, but they want all the green ones removed or something like that.
Right. And then when you're dealing with a whole cast, you have to deal with actors' equity. I mean, there are certain rules, and you want to make sure that now that they feel safe.
Well, the solo acts are sort of self-contained units. They
might have a band. They might have a band with them.
But even that is somewhat of a self-contained thing where they're controlling what's happening there versus you have a play with different characters in it. And you have to accommodate all of those costumes and sets and props and all that stuff that you probably don't have much of, if ever any, on most of the solo acts. They brought their own costume, which is what they wear, and they're going to do their own makeup, and off you go.
Right. And I've never been lead producer, name above the title, lead producer,
right?
On a play or a musical, and I mean, I've invested where my name's been in the playbill, as like a credit, where I found enough money for people to give me my little line of print, but like the soap myth that'll be me walking on stage accepting my Tony when that happens. And I think it can be a very simple set. Like we don't need, bookcases. We don't need to build the Holocaust Center for the scene that takes place in the Holocaust Center.
Of course not.
Right.
Of course not. You can suggest it, you can project it. There's all kinds of ways to do it that's relatively inexpensive.
Right. So the director says, we have to bring in clouds and it has to rain. And the producer says, no. We'll show you a picture of the cloud and make a rain sound effect.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of the theater is it's in a lot of it's, your part of it's your imagination. You're part of the show. The audience is part of the show. That's the beautiful part of it. So, all right. So a lot of what we do in the entertainment industry, but particularly in the theater, and for what you would do as a producer or someone who directs a show, is to deal with the pressure that it takes to put them on. Pressures. What do you do to deal with pressure?
Boy, I guess you just got to be good to yourself, you know. I went to Provincetown this summer and I didn't have a show. And for like the first time, I would wake up and open my eyes and I was like, how many tickets? Oh, I don't care. Like I was just on vacation. And usually you would open your eyes and you'd be at work and you'd want to know your ticket count. I think the best way to deal with the pressure is, you know, to be good to yourself outside of that pressure, you know, to get yourself a massage, to go for a walk, to, you know, a friend of mine taught me a lesson. You know, she buys scallops and makes them every once in a while. I go, aren't they expensive? And she goes, yeah, I'm worth it. And I was like, yeah, I am too. And they're the easiest things to make, you know, and it was just a little life lesson from my octogenarian friend who I used to go to the theater with every month, who I don't get to see as much as I'd like. And she, you know, she taught me a lesson and now I buy scallops.
It's good to live a little, isn't it?
Isn't it? And we need to be good to ourselves now, because I hate this phrase. I'm going to use it now more than ever. I really think we need to be good to each other and to the people around us as much as we can, because everybody comments negatively on everything these days and feels they have the right to. So, you know, a little kindness, a little politeness. Somebody was just waving me into a parking space just the other day, and it was none of their business. And they were helping me. And I just walked out and I said, I just love kindness. Thank you. You know, and they just chose to come on, come on, come on. Like they were like, good.
We are definitely living in very interesting times, and people have all sorts of different ways of looking at the world, and sometimes it's in conflict with with the rest of what we know to be.
I got out of the car and I said, thank you for your kindness. And I hope that's why people keep choosing to work with me. Margaret, Paula, Linda, whomever keeps coming back to me knows I'm not an asshole.
That okay. You're going to treat them well.
Right. I'm not going to fudge the numbers or do things that people do. I'm not going to be. Who was that gentleman in the Broadway community that everybody came out and said he's an asshole to work for?
Oh, that was Scott Rudin.
Scott Rudin. Yeah, people and you know.
Well, unfortunately, Scott Rudin has had that reputation for a long time. Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, well.
And I certainly know people who have worked with him, and they usually walk away and say, I don't ever want to work with him again. But that's been going on for 35 years. So
now it's out in the open.
Now it's out in the open. Well, I have been speaking to Adam Weinstock for close to an hour, and we're going to sort of wind this thing down. I'm just wondering, you've clearly worked with and met lots of folks in the entertainment industry, both famous and not. And I'm wondering, in all your experiences, if you have a story, or even more than one, if you do, that's amusing or frightening or strange or quirky or weird or just plain funny.
Funny story. Yeah, here's a producer's story. It's not going to be as full of names as some of the other folks who might have been on your show. One of my first scariest things was when I produced, and you know, you find a town that you can produce in. New York, I have a writer, I have a gentleman friend, and he just doesn't understand New York. He doesn't understand it. Like, his show was able to be produced at a small theater in London, and it was able to be produced by me. I promised I would do it, and we did it.
Right.
But he doesn't quite get, you know, like you can, you know, if you want to produce a show in Chicago, you know, you have $200,000, boom, you produce your show. You can do it. You can get Jeff nominated. But I was put upon to solo produce, because the producers dropped out. It was all up to me. Naked Boys Singing in Provincetown in 2001. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to do it all alone. And it was all me and all creative. It was me all alone. And I produced off Broadway with people. I'd done shows with people. So I brought Naked Boys Singing up there with a non-equity cast. They just did the 20th anniversary now. And one of my cast members from 20 years ago is the producer now. Wow. He was one of my proteges, and now he's like, you know, he's huge these days. His name is Tom Dangor, and he's brilliant. And he loves producing Naked Boys Singing, and he loves working from my prototype in Provincetown. Naked Boys Singing was 8 guys. I did it with 6. He just did it with 5 equity actors.
Wow, okay.
From non-equity actors, where they, you know, when it comes to your professionalism. And when we went to Provincetown, they were all like housed together, and it was just, you can imagine housing 6 non-equity naked actors. In any case, the town, Provincetown, was different then. And I also had Margaret Cho across the street for like the first time ever. So this was like a big deal for me. This little year in Provincetown, where I was a big fish in a small pool, made me in New York, because people visited there and they came back and they knew my name because I had naked boys singing and across the street Margaret Cho, and it was insane. I was like the person to meet, and I was like dating people. It was insane. So they tried. Somebody complained, and because of the Massachusetts blue laws, they started writing me two $50 tickets a night. You couldn't have full frontal nudity or porn within 500 feet of town hall, 500 feet of a church, or 500 feet of a sex shop. So I got 2 tickets a night, and I didn't know what we were going to do. And non-equity actors were panicked. Do we have to leave? And I go, don't worry about it. Then we were on the cover of the Cape Cod Times because of the scandal. It was a scandal back then, before 9/11. This is, when people really had something to worry about naked boys singing. And then I was interviewed in all these papers. We were on the cover of the Cape Cod Times, and people said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I said, I'm adding 2 shows a week. And they go, what? I go, I'm adding 2 shows a week because we couldn't, there's nothing better. The lesson I learned is to sell a show than the little scandal, but to tell somebody there's something you cannot see.
Of course.
If it's at Hamilton, you got to go. So I added 2 shows a week. Now here's where the producing comes in. My 2 tickets a night added up to $100. Let's say we sat 100 people in the house, and that was an average of $30 a ticket. 30 times 100 is 3,000. Times 8 is 24,000. I paid my $800 in tickets a week to make 24,000. And it was
that's called a good return on investment.
People said, I can't believe they were naked. I said, could you believe it when they sang? Naked boys sing, And the guy who was in it, who's a producer now, Tom Bangor, he was a replacement. He loves to tell this story. When I was talking to Adam Weinstock, he said, you're so lucky to have this job. I wouldn't hire a plumber before I met him first. You better not F up one time. And then, Tom tells that story all the time. And we've been friends for 20 years. It's 20 years. And he was a naked boy singing. And it was just a very funny show to do somewhere. I just found the pictures of the naked boys with Margaret, and they loved it. They loved it. They thought they were stars. But,
Well, that's certainly, that title alone is an attractor for some people. So,
or detractor, right?
Or detractor, one of the two. All right. So last question for you today, Adam. Do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip for those that are just starting out, or maybe they're in a little bit into the business a little bit and trying to get to the next level, something solid that they can really sink their teeth into?
Yeah. Find your place for your talent. I was doing stand-up comedy in Chicago, and a drag queen came up to me. Was it a drag queen? Some older queen. And he was like, take your talent elsewhere. Like he was like, this is the wrong. He was trying to inspire me to go play different clubs than like the dive I was in. Some of my former students or proteges are doing podcasts now. Not on the level you're doing it, Steve, but they're kids, but they're starting. You can do a podcast. You can get a microphone. You can get somebody interviewed. You can put a mic in front of someone, ask them some questions, and start. You can find a way. My trainer was over before, and because in retirement, my aunt gave me some funds, and she said, hire a trainer. So I did. I listened to her. And he said, do you know any actresses on Long Island? Because I think we need to replace somebody. And, put people together, introduce people to each other who are worthwhile, and find your niche, and then the community will buy in. People think you sell out. They buy in. Were we looking for a rap musical about Alexander Hamilton? Was that what we were all waiting for?
No.
It came and we all bought in, I remember him talking about it, Lin-Manuel, at the Kennedy Awards. They were expecting him to do something from In the Heights. And he's like, I'm doing a rap music about Alexander Hamilton. And Mrs. Obama laughed. He's like, don't laugh. You know, I laughed when I heard about Back to the Future, the musical. I go, you're kidding. No. You know, and, you know, just find a way to get to, you know, get your talent out there.
Well, that's solid, sound piece of advice for many industries, but in particular in the entertainment industry, to find your way, because there is no one single solitary path.
That's it. Absolutely, Steve. There is no one way. Someone asked me if I wrote. I go, not yet. You know, I don't know. You know, I did improv, but I've never written, you know, a play or. I mean, I've written parodies, obviously.
Well, there's nothing stopping you other than just doing it.
Other than me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think that's the lesson you're teaching, which I think is very, very sound and solid and valuable, which is there is no substitute for just doing it, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you get better.
I love that you use the phrase, the lesson that you're teaching, because I feel like I'll always be an educator. I hope I'll always be a creator. And I hope I find new and creative ways in this year that I can't even imagine now, this afternoon, but something comes up new, something crashes through my living room and I'm like, oh, what's this? How do I help it happen?
Well, I hope that you are ever inspired to continue to produce and bring entertainment to the world, because we certainly can use as much of it as you're able to dish out. So I want to deeply thank Adam Weinstock for spending an hour with me on StoryBeat today. It's really been a terrific journey through your process of how you get through this world and involved in show business and in theater.
I hope so. It was a pleasure for me, certainly.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden. And may all your stories be unforgettable.